Writing in Time magazine, Michael Kugelman has said India and Pakistan are arguably closer to war than at any time in recent years. Would you agree with that, or do you feel that there is a diplomatic off-ramp towards de-escalating?
No, I believe the latter rather than the former, because India has really chosen a very calculated, careful and calibrated approach to the response to the awful terror attacks. It was very clear that the terrorists couldn't just walk in and kill 26 Indian civilians with impunity. Some punitive action had to be taken in order to convey that there would be a price to pay for what they had done. But at the same time, India did it in an incredibly sensitive manner. That is, that they hit well-known terror establishments, headquarters of the Lashkar-e-Toiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed, organizations that have been proscribed by the United Nations Security Council and by many governments as terrorist organizations based in Pakistan. But they chose to do so at 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:05 to 1:30 in the morning, when there were not likely to be any civilians wandering about, in order to minimize civilian damage, collateral damage. The idea being very clearly that we were not in the business of killing people, unlike the terrorists. We were trying to dismantle their infrastructure. Secondly, India went out of its way, even though it is amply clear that the people behind the terrorism are indeed malign elements in the Pakistani military. Nonetheless, India took care not to attack or touch any Pakistani military installations or government installations. The signal very clearly was this is not the opening salvo in a protracted war. This is a one-off retaliation for an outrageous atrocity committed against our country and our people. And I think that message was very clear. There is really no justification thereafter for further escalation. If Pakistan does choose to escalate, India is, of course, ready. But I do believe that all the calls for restraint we're hearing from around the world have to be heard by Pakistan as well. They are a country in pretty bad shape with a stagnating economy, a deeply unpopular army, and not enough supplies to last a particularly long war. I think they too should understand that they're better off in claiming that honor is satisfied with their shelling across the border that has killed 15 Indian civilians since the strikes, and that they could then start dialing down. That's my view. Of course, the men in military headquarters in Rawalpindi might think differently, and in that case, we'll have to see.
Shashi, is that it then, in terms of Operation Sindoor, and has it achieved its objectives? Is it mission accomplished in terms of degrading terrorist infrastructure?
Look, we have no illusions that those buildings can be built again. I mean, there's no question that the mindset that fuels terrorism is not going to disappear overnight. And I think we have to understand, therefore, that this is not a long-term solution, let alone a definitive or permanent answer to the problem we have. That, I'm afraid, is going to require other sorts of more tangible, shall we say, longer-term measures. But in the short term, it has at least taught them a lesson that you don't go around killing people without paying a price for it. You have paid a price. Now, you want to kill more people, you'll pay a bigger price. It's up to you to decide what you want to do. Pakistan has bred these monsters of terrorism for far too long as an instrument of state policy. And Pakistan has to learn that there will not be an unlimited tolerance for this sort of behavior. If you look at the way in which India reacted over the years to one terrorist outrage after another, after the horrible attacks of 26/11 in Mumbai in 2008, which killed 170 civilians. What did India do? They chose the path of peace. They took diplomatic measures. They had Pakistan condemned in the UN Security Council. They had these agencies blacklisted. They put Pakistan on the grey list of the Financial Action Task Force. And they thought this might at least modify Pakistan's behavior. It didn't. When the next atrocity happened, India gave them one more chance. They invited Pakistan to participate in the investigation into the Pathankot terrorist attacks. The Pakistanis came over, their intelligence people walked into an Indian airbase, and they went back and said, oh, the Indians did it to themselves. Now, we don't kill our own people to satisfy some bizarre propaganda notion of the Pakistanis. So that was the last straw. And the next attack in Uri, the Indian government took one step up. They sent a squad across the line of control, the de facto border, to attack a base from which this attack had happened. Next attack, Pulwama, 40 Indian soldiers killed. They went one step further still. They conducted an airstrike on Balakot. Now, the next major attack, 26 civilians killed, and with a far more malign intention of undermining tourism in Kashmir, destroying the Kashmiri economy, and creating problems in Kashmir, we decided at this point to take one step further more and hit 9 strikes. So the escalation has been very steady and gradual over a couple of decades. But Pakistan is left in no doubt that the next atrocity will involve an even bigger reprisal and so on.
Shashi,
so the ball is in their court. They have to choose.
That said, do you feel that this latest outbreak of hostilities is different this time? You've drawn the parallel with Mumbai in 2008. Civilians were targeted and killed in Pahalgam. It feels like India is preparing its public for a worst-case scenario and a prolonged conflict. Blackout drills, civil defence exercises implemented in many major cities, especially in the north and the northeast. Is there a chance and is there a risk that Pakistan could strike targets beyond Indian-administered Kashmir?
Well, look, I mean, that's obviously a choice that the Pakistanis have to make. We are not interested in prolonging the conflict. India has been a status quo power for a very long time. We want to focus on the growth of our economy, on our own technological future, on the well-being and prosperity of our people. We have no interest in war. It is Pakistan that wants to upset the long-standing relationships in the subcontinent in order to seize territory in Kashmir for themselves. They are a military state. I've often remarked, paraphrasing Voltaire on the Holy Roman Empire, that this is not a state with an army. This is not a state with an army. It's an army with a state. And that's the problem we have in dealing with Pakistan. Paraphrasing Voltaire on Prussia is what I meant to say. Anyway, to cut a long story short, the situation we have depends entirely on whether Pakistan wants to grow in peace in this neighborhood or whether the army believes its best prospects for dominating Pakistan, for controlling a disproportionate share of that country's resources. The Pakistani army already controls a larger percentage of that country's GDP than any army controls of any country's GDP in the world. And given all of that, if they want to preserve that by keeping tensions alive with India, well, India will be prepared. We are prepared. And I'm quite sure that we're prepared to give as good as we get. But that's not our preferred option. So when the countries call for restraint, we are already restrained. It's Pakistan that needs to be restrained.